Hi, I'm Natalie, and you're watching NDE Talk. And today's guest, Dr. Carl Simononik, a
Hi, Natalie.
scientist. Hi, Carl. A scientist who, in his earlier years, conducted research at the NASA Johnson Space Center. He also has a podcast on the discussion of Nexus theory and other topics related to brain and consciousness. And today he'll be sharing his story of a near death experience. Carl, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're
That was
welcome.
that was a lovely intro. I'll preface my remarks though by explaining mine was pretty much regular, without any. Um, I've read a lot of other ones that are pretty similar. I'll describe it anyway, and give you my own take on it. But but the most important part, I think, about my NDE is what happened afterward, how much it's affected me throughout my whole life and actually guided my scientific career and influenced, at least I should say. And it's just made a huge difference. It's made a very huge difference. And I will, it was, I have learned much more about my NDE as a result of how it helped me figure out how consciousness works in our brains. And and I'll tie it all together, tell you about my NDE, and then talk about the fruits of my NDE as they blossomed forth over the years to give me what the understanding that I have now, which I want to share with all your fans. Um, I'm not going to be one of those that takes half an hour to talk about how crushed I was all up in an auto accident or chewed up by wild lions or whatever that other people have had their NDEs resulting from. Um, Mine was pretty simple. I was invited to a party. I was 18 years old. It was a highly experimental age, and I was offered a drug that I now well, I would say that I shouldn't have taken, except it gave me my NDE, which to me is the single most significant experience of my entire life, and I'll tell you why. But I was given a drug I don't want to name because I don't want anyone to try it. It's dangerous, and um, but I didn't know. And and the way I look at it now, I have a PhD in physiology. That's the study of the body. And the way I look at NDEs is that it's possible in certain cases for consciousness to become dissociated from the body without going away. Like anesthesia makes consciousness go away. Sleep makes your normal waking consciousness go away. But but although there's a lot of room for variability there, lucid dreams and so forth, where you can be actively awake inside your dreams. Uh, Consciousness takes many forms, but but it is possible to make your body and brain inhospitable to consciousness so that you leave, and your consciousness leaves your body. And so um, I, as in typical near-death experiences, mine began with an out-of-body experience. When I when I was perceiving the effects of this drug taking over, I laid down on the couch at this party, not horizontally, just kind of slouched back. It was a really wide couch, um, and just let it. I knew there wasn't anything I could do, and I let it just wash over me, and and pretty soon I was popping out of my body into a kind of a void, a darkness anyway, um, but carrying with me an outline, an image of my body that that was my out of body experience, and and then and then in this void, was the entrance to a tunnel, the classic tunnel where I had my life review. Now I would like to talk about life reviews a bit because um, even though I didn't come back with every memory from this experience that I would like, that I wish I had, I did, I did, I did ask and was able to retain a lot of knowledge about what happened, and it kind of generically. And in a life review, what happens is you you basically relive your entire life, where you are re-interacting with all the people in it. And and there's a as you enter the tunnel, in my case, the tunnel was surrounded by lights, or I should say lined by lights on the inner wall. Couldn't actually see the inner wall. It was dark, but it was defined by all the lights on it. And and as I started moving down the center of the tunnel, a light would come off the wall and move towards me in the center, and we would meet up and kind of join in a kind of oneness that that two people can share. There wasn't any God experience or anything, other entities present at that point. It was very one-on-one and personal, but but we merged in a way so that when we relived our experiences, we we knew what the other was completely thinking and what their motives for their actions, or my actions, were.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, this is one of the most humbling experiences you can ever have, because no secrets stay hidden. Nothing you ever thought they'd never find out stays hidden. Everything, particularly the wrong things that you do to people,
Mm.
you answer for. And you answer for in a way, because when you're having this experience together, you're joined together, you're experiencing a oneness such that any pain you cause them, you experience yourself.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep.
You're you're seeing what anything bad you do to any people or to any animal either. Anything bad you do is just, you realize you only hurt yourself because you got to totally experience it in your life review. And very, very humbling. I had been quite an asshole up to that point.
Oh.
And and
Oh.
and and it was and so it was like, oh gosh, emotionally wringing you out kind of thing. And but not all bad, not all bad. I wasn't even then I wasn't a complete asshole, but just enough to have regrets
Mm.
in your life, in my life review. And that's part of the purpose of it. You learn, you first of all have this experience of such utter empathy that not only do you feel for the other person, but you actually feel what they felt. But you have that, and you have uh guilt clicks in. I should mention at this point, I was raised Roman Catholic, so guilt is always a big deal in any Roman Catholic's life.
Definitely. Yeah.
And Um, but fortunately, the good thing about being raised a Catholic is it turned me into an atheist, a really hardcore atheist. So I went into my NDE totally devoid of any Jesus expectations or anything like that, and um, I didn't have any. But I'm sorry, I got distracted. Where was I? Take me
Yeah, you were
back.
mentioning you were raised Catholic and it
Oh
turned you
yes.
into an atheist.
It turned me into an atheist. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But the that's you undergo every emotion you ever had and every emotion every other person ever had, and 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 yet because you have this link together, you you experience a kind of oneness, you experience a forgiveness, you experience love, and you part friends, and all is fine. But you got to do this over and over and over and over and
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Mm.
And 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 one bit of information that I came back with, well, I'm not sure I should put it that way. Um, because the end result that I'll tell you later about understanding how consciousness works,
Yeah.
how how it expresses what our consciousness is a tiny bit, a little tiny bit of the expression of God within us, living within us. And when we have that oneness, we absolutely know it. But but we do, while we do share some of that aspect during the life review, it's not nearly as great
Mm.
as happens later. So 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 you part, and you part friends, and all is good, and it's love washing through and over both of you, and it's nice. It's nice. It's not, you don't have any enemies when you're done, and it's like you're washed clean. There's a, you have a repentance that you can't help when you realize you were doing this to yourself. and
Yeah.
and 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 um and with animals, it's important too, because we live in a society where people treat animals like objects and buy
Mm.
pieces of them in the store to take home and cook and eat, without ever giving any regard to
Yeah.
the life that they're responsible for by consuming it.
Mm.
Now, this varies from one culture to another. Some cultures, especially like um, native cultures, they've relied on meat eating for thousands of years, and but for them, it's usually both necessity combined with custom, and an honoring of the spirit whose life they took.
Yeah.
You know, at least that's how Native Americans do it. How about Native Australians? Do you know?
I don't know much of the background in regards to that, but
No.
I do know what you mean by when we eat, we just go to the shops, we purchase that meat and eat it as if an animal is a product, and in reality, it's not, and it is a sad thing. So,
Well, the part of the bottom line for my
mm,
NDE in what we taught me in sorry, in what it taught me, is that the consciousness of an animal is just as much one with our own,
yeah, exactly. Mm,
because it's all derived from a single source. Anyway, so I'll go on from there. The I I didn't keep count. I have no way to know how many lights moved, I merged with briefly in the tunnel. I have no idea how long it took for me to move through. It's it's better described as a timeless space,
mm,
a space where time doesn't matter. You don't need to. You don't get the urge to go to the bathroom. You don't feel sleepy. You're in this environment, and it
present.
present.
Mm,
Yes,
yeah.
whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
you're present. And at the end of it, I kind of, at the end of this tunnel, I popped out into a void. I think of it as a bigger and darker void, a deep velvety blackness, having a
Mm,
quality that the first void in the out of body experience didn't quite have. Just like the lights were low but not completely uh just different. Something was different about that, about the quality of this velvety black void
Do
out
you
out
think
on the
that
other side.
the first void is almost a shedding of your soul, so to speak, leaving your body before you enter into the next void? So do you think that the first void was in a way you shedding your humanly self into your spiritual self, like a cleansing, if that makes sense?
It's possible. I mean, I was definitely shedding a sense of self. I didn't know, you know, I didn't know what my name was. My name was left behind. I
Mhm.
was an entity that was just out there being, having these experiences. And perhaps it's possible that there's an adaptation phase when you have an out of body experience. You suddenly don't have eyes to see it with anymore. Well, if you were totally blind, that would kind of look like a void, except I could detect the tunnel too. The tunnel was um, was there. So it wasn't a lack of sensory perception, it was a change of sensory
Yeah.
perception. Okay. I can't really say why the two voids were different, but the first was was not as prolonged, didn't seem as deep, didn't seem quite as black, yet was black too. I know it not everything has to not
Not everything has to
translating
make sense.
not everything has to make sense, and translating
Mm,
an experience like this into English is, you have to do the best you can. Language is a limiting thing.
yeah.
So anyway, I popped out into the second void after the life review, and just kind of floated there briefly till I noticed off to my right there was a distant light, very, very distant light. And it wasn't illuminating the void, but once I looked at it, I saw it and I focused on it, and it seemed to be very welcoming and warm, and but mostly bluish. It was mostly bluish looking back. I think of it now, the best mental image I have is when I got closer to it was bluish with a lot of white streaks and occasional patterns and colors and things. But I'm jumping ahead. I first saw it at a distance, and and uh, felt myself starting to move towards it, or at least closing the distance. Maybe it was moving towards me a little bit too, and I don't know. It was just closing the distance, and as I started getting closer to it, it got brighter. It became very, very bright. I call it blinding if it was from a normal terrestrial light source, like some kind of light shining in your face. Um, but even though it was intensely bright, it wasn't blinding at all. I like to call it a clear light that that just kind of washed over and through me, and even though it was intense, it wasn't it wasn't in any way overpowering. It was throughout the whole thing, it was peaceful and non-threatening. As I started to get close to it, I did encounter a little bit of a feeling of anxiety, like, oh no, am I going to go fall straight into this thing or what? What's going on here? I didn't know. But as I got closer to it, I sensed a presence. I sensed nothing but goodness and love coming from it. And and I entered in I entered into a kind of, I didn't approach it straight on, straight into the center. I I veered off to the side a little bit and spiraled around it once or twice, maybe three times. I don't know. I didn't count, but but I spiraled into it. And as I was spiraling around, I got to watch it. I got to look at it with all kinds of stuff going on down there. I didn't know what it was, but I could see movement, I could see features, I could see things. It was like looking at looking at a close-up picture of Jupiter. You know how Jupiter has all these structures and bands on it? You don't know what they are. You know, they're probably giant storms, of course, but you don't you all you can do is look at it. You don't get any sense of how strong the winds are or what it smells like or how hot or cold it is. It's just you're just seeing a, a, a little bit of superficial aspect of some of its features. So that's how I felt. I was seeing a lot of stuff, but I had no idea what it was. And and uh, but when I spiraled in, it was there was a sense of welcoming. There was just a growing, almost overwhelming. It did become overwhelming sense of being in the presence of God, and
Wow.
and 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 it's just I wish there was some way to convey to your fans how just peak experience this is, that can only be followed by one other peak experience, by a greater peak experience. And but before I talk about that, I want to mention at this point that NDEs typically have discrete events going on. Okay. They always start with an out of body experience. They almost always have a life review through a tunnel. There's almost always a void afterwards. Um, Not everyone describes a void first, though,
Mm.
after the out of body experience. And then some people see the light and some move towards it. But at any point, an NDE can be reversed and turned around. Some people get a choice of whether they get to return or not. Do you want to go or do you want to stay? And and but the point I want to make here is that I've begun to notice by reading NDE experiences, I've begun to notice that there's a sharp dividing line in the people who go through an NDE up to the point that I've just described, and then something else happens if they go past that. Because
Mm.
it's possible to get right up, basking in the light of God, the presence of God, and and not go the next step that I did. I was pulled in. I merged. I completely merged with the consciousness, the higher consciousness that most of us call God.
Yeah.
And and at which point I completely lost all sense of personal identity, and my consciousness merged in was like, you know, a drop merging into the ocean, except instantaneously everywhere. What my experience was a perception, a direct perception of everything going on in the universe at once.
Wow.
Not proceeding time after time, not events, you know, no clock watching, no idea how long, no way to know how long I was there, but I was I was
Wow.
suddenly I was suddenly sharing the God consciousness I became one with. And people who do that in their NDEs, people who go all the way in to experience that oneness, that is the biggest take home message of their NDEs. People who don't go in, they can tell you about God. They can tell you about the love they felt. They can tell you, a lot of wonderful things. But without knowing, without it seems to me anyway, without personally knowing that oneness, it doesn't make a mark. It doesn't really make a mark on you. And and
Mm.
and so I've begun to look at NDEs as, you know, almost either or. If they if they didn't if they didn't go in and experience that oneness, then well, then they never really feel it. They feel a certain sense of it through the love, but they still continue afterwards to believe themselves separate individuals, because
Interesting.
we're not. We are
Mm.
all little bits, little expressions off the same source of consciousness. And I'll explain in a little while exactly how that happens.
I look
Okay.
forward to it.
Physically, how that happens. Okay. So I'll go on. I was in this lovely environment where I was just marveling at all. I knew everything. I saw everything, and I zoomed in a few times on. I only have the dimmest memories, just like quick glimpse views of checking out worlds. I was made aware that there are trillions upon trillions of other civilizations, not other people, not other conscious entities, other whole civilizations exist out there in uncountable numbers. We are by no means alone in the universe. Humans have evolved to be very chauvinistic creatures, you know.
I
They
can
used to
agree to
think they
that.
used to think the earth was the center of the universe. My God, you know how how just how chauvinistic.
I've never believed that statement. No.
No, no, it doesn't make any sense at all. But I guess it did at a time. It depends on what is known and what and well, we definitely now know scientifically we're by no means at the center of the universe. But that's a different topic. I There I was enjoying it, glancing around, zooming in from time to time to take a close up at a world or something, and then all of a sudden I felt a kind of tug that backward, like, okay, fun's over, buddy. Not in words like that, but feeling like that. And 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 then it was, you know, and I started to feel a little bit of sense of being pulled away from it. And hey, what's going on? Was more attitude than words, because there was this entity I was interacting with, but I never saw it. I never had any direct perception of it. I was directly perceiving everything in the universe at once, but I didn't really have a picture of this entity. We talked about this earlier, but I'd like to mention again that every religion, every major religion in the world that I know of, has three things in common, and only three things in common. And that is major things, let's say. They all say God is light, God is everywhere, and God is in us. And after that, they all branch off into their own little particulars about what they think they believe in and so forth. And none of that means anything, but they get the core of it right. I shouldn't say none of that. There's some value. There's some value in understanding parables and learning from Jesus's words, the words in red in people's Bibles. But all that other stuff, you know, all the various authors, they didn't understand. They didn't understand oneness either, even though Jesus tried to teach it. He said, I and the Father are one. Made that real clear and unambiguous. And another time he said, what is it? Oh, he said we are all sons of God, like him. And and his purpose was to teach us how to be like him.
Yeah.
And and you know, instead of thinking of this as so divinely inspired,
Mm.
it's there is there are certain kinds of brain damage that can occur to people, that minor brain damage, that cause them to then exist in a totally spiritual sense of oneness with everything.
Mm.
And I think maybe Jesus was one of these people who just knew, walking
Yeah.
around,
Mm.
that God was working in him and through him, and they were sharing. He was getting to share. He was given the gift of sharing a little bit of God's consciousness during his time on earth, and he spent it well. trying to help
Yeah.
people, but they got it all backwards in the sense of separateness about it. You know, angels and demons and goblins and devils and 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 anyone who has any experience uh, in an NDE where you even get close to that godness, um, you know that it's all about love. There's all about love, and it's simply impossible for God to be a cruel psychopath that would ever create or allow the creation of a place of eternal torture for those of
Mm,
his imperfect creations who didn't follow the rules just right.
yeah.
That's just wrong. Totally,
Mm.
totally wrong. And I wish and I hope that maybe someday modern Christianity will come around to recognizing it. But I didn't come here to bash Christianity. It has a certain value. I learned I learned about it, for example, from my Roman Catholic upbringing,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to relate very well. But but anyway, okay, so back to the story. I keep diverging. I hope you don't mind.
No, that's
Um,
perfectly fine.
okay. Um, as I was being pulled back and had told I had to leave, I didn't want to. I did not want to. I protested. It was like figuratively kicking and screaming, no, 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 like you see a little kid rolling around on the floor in a shopping center somewhere and having a tantrum. No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. It was think of it like that. It was almost that bad, but it didn't last very long because this entity that was ushering me out was very kind and said, look, I'm sorry, but you just, when I say said, I don't mean in those very words. I mean conveyed the impression of very clearly, but not, we weren't speaking English. Okay, it was all just mind to mind communication.
Would you
And
say telepathic?
yeah, but um I'd like to reserve the word telepathic for use between human minds on Earth. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what a better word is. It's as good as any because it is. I mean, if you are having a mind-to-mind communication, sure, I
Yeah.
guess that's telepathic. But but I think there's probably more than one way to achieve
Mm,
telepathy. We can talk
yeah.
about that sometime
Oh,
too,
I'd
if you
love
want.
to.
Okay, so as I was being ushered out, I um, I went from kicking and screaming to begging and pleading and and finally and bargaining, anything. I'll do anything. And no, 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 no. So I started once I realized it was inevitable. I made some requests. My first request was, well, please let me just then remember everything that I saw and learned here.
Nice.
And I was informed that that's not possible. And it's not possible for two reasons. First is a single human brain is far too small to hold the enormity of all the information that is out there in the universe. And I'm
Mm,
not talking about just down to every last little tiny bit. I'm talking about just if you could condense all the information in the universe down to a table of contents, that table of contents would still be too great for a single human mind
yeah.
to encompass,
Yeah.
to be able to hold and remember it all. It's just too much. Now there are people who have memorized entire phone books. Maybe they'd
Yeah.
be able to do it, but I certainly wasn't able to do it, and I was told so. It was explained to me. And the other reason is I couldn't remember all, as much nearly as much of these experiences as I would have liked, is because there are a lot of things we're not supposed to know. We're not
Yeah.
supposed to know the exact time and means of our final death, for example. We're
Yeah.
not we're not supposed to be able to be present throughout the entire universe and know everything and bring back advanced alien widgets.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
we
Makes
just we
sense. Mm,
just we can't. It would destroy the whole order of things. So
yeah.
there's kind of a there's you can merge you can merge with God and know everything God knows, but you can't be separate from
Mm.
God. The worst criminal never gets sent to hell. They get cleaned out. Everybody gets cleaned out in the life review, purged.
Unfortunate for Hitler, I'd say, for the life review, because you did mention that you felt other people's pain as it was your own. So,
Yes.
oh,
Hitler had one hell of a life review.
yeah. I
Yes.
actually feel bad for one of the most worst human beings in the world.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
You know what I
That
mean?
that
I feel that.
beyond painful, beyond it was just
Mm,
because in the end, Christians talk about judgment, and there
yeah.
actually is a kind of judgment, but it isn't anybody external to you judging you. It's you judging yourself. That's why I
Yeah.
can come back and say, God, I was an asshole. I did. I
Yeah.
judged myself. I was really an asshole. And I resolved, well, if I can't say that I did in those words at the time, but knowing what I know, that um, I certainly try to be a lot kinder and more thoughtful person now. And um, but anyway, that's I guess another topic. There are some, Charlie Manson, I'm sure, had a
Mm, yeah.
miserable life review, and
Yeah.
I could talk about certain politicians, but I'm not going to. I think I'll
Yeah.
I think I'll drop that here. Um, um, but all those people who've consumed hundreds or probably more likely thousands of animals in their lives,
Mm.
hey, you're going to be saying I'm sorry a whole lot. And um, there's no two ways around it, because once you are that entity and you feel its pain, you know
Mm,
what you did,
yeah.
and there's no ambiguity, no twisting it around, no changing the frame, no shifty words, no lies are going to work, nothing like that is going to do. So anyway, after I was done, I was in that state. That whole business took somewhere between 8 and 10 hours, probably. Just a
Wow.
wild guess, really. And because it was morning, completely morning, when I came awake and popped out of it, and it was like it was the most unusual sensation, like combination of phew, I'm back, and wait, I didn't want to be here. Wait. And, um, but
Here
it
you
was
are.
here I am. And it was such an overwhelming experience. I could not have summarized it for you then
Mm,
like I have now in just a
yeah.
few minutes. It's impossible. I couldn't have done that. I wouldn't have had the right vocabulary. I don't really have the right vocabulary now for some of it, but I at least have what are acceptable words that most people understand. And I'm okay with using the term God, as long as it isn't being used to rope me into somebody's religious system. Um,
Yeah. I
but
mean, that was one question I was also going to ask you. Because of this experience, have you become more spiritual, or obviously not any religion, of course, I've found now, but has it made you feel closer to the one and all that is?
oh, well, yes, it changed me. It turned me around, and was the most important experience of my entire life that still affects me almost every day in ways that I haven't always recognized, but sometimes I do. Oh, I left out something. It was explained to me. One of the things, well, why do I have to go back? Well, why? I demand an explanation, kind of thing. Um, I was told, I was told that I had um, life purposes that needed to be fulfilled. That's my nexus theory of consciousness. And this developed very slowly over decades. And and only looking back on it can I see the influence of my NDE helping to make certain kinds of choices, and also bringing certain extremely unlikely events plopped into my lap, so that, wow, okay. And I'll tell you some of these. Um, but I do have this very strong sense of my NDE guiding me towards this, because um, I was enrolled in a graduate program in physiology at um, the University of California at Davis, and that's Northern California. And one of the things I used to enjoy doing was browsing the library stacks in on my spare time. If I didn't need to go home right away, I'd wait. I'd just go to the library, and especially when it was really hot out. It gets very hot. It gets over 100 degrees Fahrenheit there. That's that's like over 40 degrees
Oof.
centigrade, I think. Very, very hot in the
Yeah.
summertime. And so library is a nice place to be. And they have all these bound journal stacks, just millions of pages of knowledge that people have slowly gained by experiment, and sometimes just by thought. Sometimes they're just thought experiments, pages of mathematics and stuff. I'm not very good at math. I didn't read a lot of those, but um, I would just browse, and one night I discovered something that just practically blew me off my feet. I learned about the existence of biophotons. Biophotons are light, photons of real light that are emitted by all living cells, including every living cell of our bodies, is slowly, very weakly giving off light. It's so dim that it's too dim for our eyes to detect. Every cell gives off somewhere around maybe 1 or 2 photons per second, just boop, 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 pop, 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 just slowly. They add up. There's a lot of them, but they're not they're not designed. They're not there to be shown off. They're used
Yeah.
for they're used for communication within the body for other cells. There are specialized systems, um, usually referred to as bioluminescence, where animals do give off visible light. You can see it with your eyes. There are fish with these like flashlight bulbs underneath their eyes that
Yeah.
they can flash at their other species and basically talk to each other. What they say, I don't know, but they use it for communication. Fireflies use it for communication. Nobody knows why bacteria growing in the ocean, for example, will start to all bioluminesce together, but they do, almost like they're talking
Wow.
to each other, or
Yeah.
almost, or almost like they're using this light to form a higher consciousness with
Yeah.
the light in the sea, because physics has these two sciences. Chromodynamics describes the physical materialization of matter in our world through the uh, uh, interactions of quarks and gluons, fundamental particles that are that exist in our world, but are constantly interacting with the 0 point energy to
Yeah.
keep their existence going,
Mm.
to power everything that happens. All the energy of an atom, for example, that's tied up in quarks and gluons, is is being reflected somehow, guided through it, or guided to it through the 0 point energy. And the other major physical field in the case of nexus theory, the more important one, actually, quantum electrodynamics, describes all the interactions of light with other light and with matter. And the mathematics is so well worked out that QED, for quantum electrodynamics, has been called the jewel of physics for its ability to to mathematically predict the results of certain experiments out to, I don't know how many decimal places. I want to say 8 or 9 or 10. That's a lot. You usually don't get your experimental predictions matched out to trillionths or less of a there's usually some measurement error, but there's hardly any in QED. So they call it the jewel of physics, and and experiments have demonstrated that this 0 point energy is real. It is
Yeah.
real. It does exist, and it has great power, but for reasons nobody understands yet, it has very little ability to interact in a measurable way, I should say, in a way that we can measure, even though it's
Yeah.
sustaining
Mhm.
everything that's going on. We can design experiments to just see a little tiny bit of it and go, yep, it's there, but how do we tear the covers off to see the rest? And so physics is learning, the science of physics is learning about this, about QED and QCD. And so if you think of this timeless area encompassing what the 0 point energy is, I can't say that the 0 point energy is only all the light that we talked about that you'd see on a blanket out at night, but that's there too. All that light is there too. The universe has this 0 point energy that is filled with and saturated with light. What they the physicists refer to is every interaction of light with other light or light with matter is mediated by a virtual photon or a virtual particle. They mean the same thing. A photon and a particle, waves and particles aren't distinguished. They're just, and this may not be the best explanation, but some mechanism of energy transfer happens from the ZPE to maintain our physical world. And the way they think of it, the way it's envisioned currently, is these little virtual photons popping in and out of existence very quickly, only lasting, you can't catch one. You can't directly measure one. You can only infer the actions of a whole lot of them when you construct an experiment of two very thin metal plates, very, very thin. If you get them very close together, so close, they will start to exclude certain wavelengths of light energy. And that, because you exclude that energy, it causes a force to be pressed upon the two metal sheets. And these are super fine, most careful measurements, and they don't measure much force, but it is real. And they can do it by making very flat sheets
Incredible.
that it's possible to get them close enough together that they are less than the wavelength of say visible light, which
Yeah.
runs 400 to about 400 to 800 nanometers is the visible range, with the shorter light being in the blue end, at the blue end, and the longer light, 800 nanometer light being at the red.
Yeah.
So okay, maybe I've talked myself into a corner here. Oh, that energy, that 0 point energy, all that light, think of it as a seething cauldron of interactions going on. And whenever you have light interacting with other light, or any kind of waves interacting with other waves, you get wave interference patterns. What that means is that when waves come together and they both crest at the same point, their energy is additive. If two waves come together where one's cresting and one is at its lowest point, they'll cancel out to zero.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what wave interactions do, which you can kind of see very briefly by throwing a handful of pebbles onto a pond or
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
water puddle or
I was
something.
thinking of the
You,
picture behind you, throwing a few rocks in there would give you a great example.
yes,
Yeah.
it does. And in fact, In fact, I have some videos of it, but they're not very good. I need to put something very white or something under the water so the ripples show up well. Anyway, um, um, the these wave interactions are how you can use wave interactions, I should say, to carry information. In fact, wave interactions are what holograms are made from. Holograms are made by splitting a laser beam of coherent light, meaning all the phases. It's all every photon is up at the same time and every
Yeah.
photon is down at the same time.
Mhm.
They're all in phase. And they split the beam, they bounce one beam off an object that they want to take a picture of, and the other beam gets reflected around by doesn't bounce off anything but mirrors, so it stays nice and clean. And then they call that the reference beam. And that beam is combined with the first beam that is bounced off an object, say, that that so that the beams interact and overlap when they expose a photographic plate. That's typically how it's done with today's technology. I suppose now
Yeah.
it's probably possible to do it with um, digitally, record on a digital surface.
Mm,
Um, but I don't know if the technology has developed that far
mm.
uh, yet. But what I do know about holograms and and um, and on film is if is that you then can recreate the image that you took a picture of by just shining a reference beam, another laser, or the same laser of the same wavelength that you use to make the laser or make the hologram.
Yeah.
You reconstitute a three-dimensional image by shining a reference beam at it, and it interacts with the wave interference patterns on the film, which
Mm.
by themselves, if you just look at you're taking a picture. We're accustomed to looking at pictures of things and seeing, we see a head and hands and feet and a body and so forth. And but a hologram just looks like, if you see anything at all, most of it's microscopic, just little specks and little lines scattered around, or
Mm.
sometimes they have like spherical, what look like spherical rings, like if you were to throw a handful of stones in the water and then take a flash picture of it to freeze it, you'd see a whole bunch of interactions going on.
Yeah.
Sometimes they look like that. um I'll have to do another podcast where I show you some pictures.
Yeah, that'll be
um,
interesting.
um anyway, because holograms have this capability of storing information, they have some special features.
Yeah.
Besides storing three-dimensional images, they can store video, they can store um, data, like data from spreadsheets or Google Docs or whatever.
Yeah.
They can store programs, and they can even execute programs within them.
Yeah,
Okay,
crazy.
and this is just what is known presently
Yeah.
about holograms. The technology, we use the technology somewhat, not very much yet, but I think there's a whole lot more to be learned about it. And one of the
Yeah.
things I think that remains to be learned about it is that consciousness is transmitted holographically. Cause consciousness exists and is encoded in the background structure of the universe holographically, such that
Yeah.
almost everything is conscious, but different levels of consciousness are able to arise in different systems with different levels of complexity. Our brains being complex enough to enable us to be able to appreciate it, for example, to be able to speak, to be able to have experience. But
Yeah.
some people say, philosophers like to talk about something called panpsychism. And panpsychism means that everything is conscious. And
Oh,
a lot of
okay.
people who are consciousness researchers, believe that panpsychism provides the best explanation for consciousness as being like a fundamental force, like magnetism or charge, that is capable of being expressed in the universe wherever conditions are appropriate for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so in our brains we have sufficient complexity to bring about quite a what we consider anyway quite a high level of consciousness. On, merged with it, it's nowhere near enough, but at least you can still have the experience and remember a little bit of it. And so this this 0 point energy of massive energy, just so incomprehensible energy, seething with wave interactions, that is somehow able to direct the physical formation of our physical world, has to have an organization to it. And
Yeah.
quite a number of philosophers, some famous names. David Bohm was one. Uh, Taylor, I'm blanking on his first name, wrote a book called The Holographic Universe.
Oh, I think I've heard of that actually. Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
The idea being that when people sit down to really think about the underlying structure of the universe, they pretty much almost universally come to the conclusion that it's got a holographic structure, that the
Yeah.
entire universe is a holographic one, which means, which means it means some cool things. It means in a holographic universe, everything
You
has a
can upload
holographic
and download
structure.
data from basically anywhere.
Well, it means there's data. Everything has a
Yeah.
holographic structure that you ought to theoretically be able to analyze and learn what it
Yeah.
is. Like
Yeah.
a hologram of a chair made on Earth should match a hologram of a chair made on any other planet. Uh,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
for
Interesting.
example, because without any need for translation or um, or explanation, because there's an interesting feature about holograms. There's numerous interesting features. Another one of them is that if I told you you can reconstruct a hologram by beaming a reference beam through it
Yeah.
that's of the same length that you use to create it with, and then you see a picture of what of in 3D of what was taken, right? Well, if you change that a little bit, and instead of illuminating one hologram with a reference beam, instead, if you pass that light through another hologram, so that you are illuminating one hologram with the wave interference patterns, I should say, from another hologram,
Yeah.
what you get from that, and this has actually been used by people working to design holographic digital storage systems. What you get when you combine holograms is you get a spot of light. And the spot of light, the size of it, smaller is better, and the brightness of it, brighter is better, tells you how similar the two original holograms were. So
Yeah.
if you take two holograms, if you create two holograms of the same chair, they're going to match perfectly when you line them up this way and illuminate one with the other. You'll get a very tight, bright little spot of light because they're the same thing.
Yeah.
But you can match a hologram of a chair with a hologram of a sofa, and they're kind of the same things, but they're not nearly the same thing. So you get a spot, but it'll be bigger and fuzzier. Won't be as bright. You know,
Yeah.
this
Okay.
is a
Makes
this is a
sense.
known this is a known fact. So holograms can interact with other holograms.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
what's happening in our brain, and this is everybody's take-home lesson. Pay attention to this, okay? If
Everybody,
you're
I hope you're
everybody,
listening.
if you remember nothing else, remember this: the giant hologram that fills the entire universe in the 0 point energy, that where consciousness lives, where consciousness originates, where the source of consciousness called God is embedded in this zero point energy. It's got a it's got it's got its own holographic patterns going that are able to work with the holographic patterns your brain is forming with your biophotons within the cerebral ventricles, the spaces of your brains comprising about 150 milliliters.
Wow.
Small. It's small,
Yeah.
but it doesn't take much. It doesn't
Mm.
take much because light, you're talking about interfering light, and light
Yeah.
has very, very short wavelengths. So almost any space, 150 milliliters gives you a lot of volume to do a lot of things, to create a lot of holographic structures with, through which consciousness is able to interact with the nexus being the sum total of all the wave interactions going on in any moment in the cavities and the cerebral ventricles of the brain. The consciousness is then able to interact with the brain's contents,
Yeah.
drive the neurons. It works in a process called neurophotic resonance. I can't describe every feature of nexus theory right now, but the major features of it are that the biophotons are operating in a constant state of resonance with the neural events of the brain. So
Mm.
they are making shapes and structures
Yeah.
that
Communicating.
consciousness is able to interact with and see and work with and change
Yeah.
and modify and give you new thoughts and give and and give you little intuitive hints that you don't recognize for maybe 20 years before, you know? And
Yep.
and and uh this is the source. This is how the source of our consciousness
Yeah.
shines a little bit of it in us. And I'll explain one more thing about holograms to give you a clearer view about this. If you have a film one, like I described earlier,
Yeah.
it's just an interference pattern on film, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you cut it in half, what's interesting about it is the whole, you don't, it's not like cutting a photograph in half with half on top and half on the bottom.
Mm.
The entire image is
Is
spread out
split.
across over the whole thing. So the entire image is still exists on both
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can cut those again, and again you have the whole the entire image, except as you go much smaller, very, very, very much smaller, you start to lose resolution. That's
Mm.
the fineness of things. Think of it as pixelation, is a
Yeah.
loss of resolution on your computer screen, for example. And and so it's fair to think of our nexuses as as providing a framework. A nexus is a connection point, by the way. If I didn't mention that already, I think I skipped it. A nexus is a connection point between any two things or any three things, and
Yeah.
or more. And it has a tiny little the way I think of it is that it has a tiny little representation of God's consciousness. And when I say tiny, think about the ratio of 150 milliliters to the entire volume of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how tiny we are. That's how minuscule we are in the larger,
In the
like
larger picture. Yeah.
in the larger picture, and to compare against what it for your fans to imagine what it might be like to be merged with God.
Yeah,
They
I was just
they
gonna
are
say.
they are that much more expanded, and no way can all that information, even no way can all of it ever be
Yeah,
condensed down into a single human brain. We're good.
absolutely incredible, Carl.
We're lucky to be able to do as well as we do, I
Yeah,
think, you know. And
yeah,
this is the source of our spirituality, I believe.
yeah,
And the beauty of it is it's scientifically testable.
yeah,
It should be possible to detect a uh, and visualize a nexus being constructed within the ventricles of
yeah.
human subjects or animal subjects, or whatever. Um,
We're all
and
one.
we're all one.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. Now, I'll speak to to for a moment to the people who are opposed to animal research. That's fine. You're welcome to your opinion, but it's a terrible opinion. And and because animal research is the whole reason that we have a civilization to live in that isn't like caveman days where
Yeah.
you just pestilence and disease and
Mm.
um, there's it is true that there is a certain amount of unnecessary animal testing that goes on, like for
Yeah.
cosmetics and stuff. Anybody's going to
Yeah.
put that stuff on them should take the consequences of whatever it is,
Yeah.
um, and not hurt an animal with it. And there are experiments. There have been experiments done. They're not allowed anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but there have been experiments done that were just very cruel on
Yeah.
conscious animals that nobody does anymore. Um, you know, you need you need to have surgeons need to learn how to operate on people and
Yeah.
operate on people's pets. I used to
Mm.
teach animal surgery as a
Oh.
graduate student. It's one of the things I did. And so I taught pre-med, a lot of pre-med and pre-veterinary students. And these are
Yeah.
people, for the most part, they have a goal in life. They want to be healers. And and if you're going to be a healer, you have to learn how
Mm.
how how
You
bodies
need to
work and
feel and understand and know. Yeah.
on a real intuitive sense. You have to
Yeah.
really know it from seeing it. Computer models are great. I've done that too, but people don't understand that computer models very often create the need for more animal research
Yeah.
because any model is only as good as the assumptions you make, what you already know when you enter the data and design your algorithms and stuff. And and um, um, science doesn't usually know everything. So
Mm.
when your models don't match experimental results or match what has happened before or even just match expectations,
Yeah.
well then you have to go in and ask yourself why. And sometimes it becomes necessary to do more animal research to do that. So computer modeling is not a solution. It's not a
Yeah.
solution to the problem. Now the computer modeling I did was never about that. I did research on humans, um, which was a lot of fun. And my
Yeah.
modeling, computer modeling, was on human fluid balance. But um, well,
Elaborate on that.
on what
On
my
the
earlier research.
human fluid science that you just explained.
Oh, okay. Well, that was my first serious scientific career in my postgraduate studies. My dissertation research was about um, testing a countermeasure that I developed for astronauts, how to how to help them um, avoid problems that they have called fluid shifts. When you go into weightlessness, gravity no longer acts on your blood to pull it down. So a certain amount of it shifts headward. What actually happens is about 15% of your blood volume moves out of your legs and expands the volume of blood in
Mm.
what's called the low compliance areas of your circulation. Your lungs, real stretchy, that means easily stretched. Your lungs, the atria of your heart, and the great veins like the vena cava. They're very stretchy. And so they respond when they have excess volume in them, as what happens when an astronaut goes into space and is
Yeah.
exposed to weightlessness for a prolonged period of time.
Mm.
Um, their heads get stuffy and look puffy. They by many measures, it's possible to tell that about 15% of their blood volume is shifted headward. Well, you study this on Earth by immersing someone into water up to their neck. Actually, usually the breastbone right here.
Mm.
top of the breastbone is the standard. Just below body temperature is called thermoneutral water, where they neither gain nor lose heat to the environment, and that causes a headward fluid shift due to the external counter pressure of the water. And,
Okay.
and so that's how you study it on Earth, and that's how I did it in two groups of subjects. The idea was, oh, let me finish telling you what happens. The fluid that shifts headward um, enters these high compliance areas and stretches them. And most people don't usually think about it, but your blood volume is something that's pretty tightly regulated. You have
Yeah.
just as much as you're supposed to, and no more. If you exercise a whole lot, you can gain a little bit of blood volume. Pregnant women have more blood volume in them, of course.
Yes,
they've
I
got
remember
extra
that.
circulation. Okay. And that's why they develop reddish glowing complexions and look so beautiful.
Yeah.
That way it's because they have a little extra blood volume. Well, um, what happens is it stimulates reflexes in all these easily distended areas. It stimulates reflexes, which are specialized stretch receptors, is what they are. And they're specialized and called volume receptors. We have them in these areas of our circulation that stretch out.
Yeah.
And what they do is when they're overstretched, your body thinks, oh, too much blood, got to do something about it. They trigger reflexes to right away cause the elimination of water and salts through your kidneys. You start peeing it out. Okay.
Yeah.
But not water, blood is composed of water, salts, cells, and protein. So as you lose the water and salts, do it this way, you lose the water and salts, the cells and protein become concentrated. That's called hemoconcentration.
Okay.
And because the blood, you have about 5 liters of blood. The average typical person weighing 72 kilograms has about 5 liters of blood in them,
Mm.
but about 40 liters of total body water. Okay,
Wow.
picture that relationship. 5 liters just in blood, and half of that is in red cells. Okay, 5 liters is in blood, and 40 liters is the total.
Yeah.
They are all in an osmotic balance. They're all in an osmotic balance mainly because of the protein that stays in our blood that has a kind of a suction force associated with it. It's what keeps blood in our circulation. When
Yeah.
when people are starving, you see those poor children with big, huge bellies
Yeah, the
starving
bloated
in
stomachs.
Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens because they don't get enough protein in their diet. So their blood protein level falls,
Mm.
and therefore their circulation can't hold blood in it. And what happens is they keep trying to hold blood. The only way they can do it is just by adding more water, more water, and more water. And those big bellies are just mostly full of water. It's
Oh,
called ascites, ascites, ascites in medical
okay.
terms. And
Yeah.
it's not that they're fat, they just have bellies full of water.
Yeah.
And and um, that doesn't happen to astronauts because the process just keeps continuing so that the reflexes stay activated for them to lose water, but water and salts, I should say, but then water moves back into circulation from the other rest of the 35 liters of total body water to try,
Yeah.
just due to osmotic forces. That keeps the blood volume expanded, keeps the reflexes activated, so on and so on and so on, until astronauts come back dehydrated by typically 4 to 6% of their body weight.
Yeah.
And some cosmonauts have come back dehydrated by up to 8%.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
a doctor will put you into the hospital if you're dehydrated by up to 2% of
Yeah,
your
that's
body weight.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be put in a hospital bed, probably, if not the
Probably not
emergency
feeling
room,
too good.
in intensive care. No,
Yeah.
but they'll put an IV line in you and give you wheat glucose solution.
Yeah.
And this has actually been necessary for some of the shuttle astronauts returning from space. I know because I worked with the nurses who
Mm.
actually did this and
Yeah.
when necessary. And I worked in the cardiovascular lab of
Yeah.
the Space Biomedical Research Group. It's changed now, called the National Space Biomedical Research Institute, I think, of the Medical Science Division at the NASA Johnson Space Center. And I worked, it was a really fun time. I
Yeah,
worked
I
in the
bet.
building, I worked in the very building that had been built as the quarantine facility for the returning astronauts
Wow.
who first went to the moon. You're too young to remember, but they were they were worried about bringing back moon bugs. Didn't want to
Yeah, I
bring
heard
back any
about
moon
that.
bugs, so everybody was quarantined. They took
Yeah.
them off. You know, they they put the moon rocks. They built this building that I worked in with a gigantic vacuum chamber to put the moon rocks in and the crew capsule in, and they had an Airstream trailer, not even indoors, but outside on the parking on the loading deck in the back of the building.
Yeah.
They had an Airstream trailer there, and that's where they quarantined the astronauts for like 2 weeks or something. I don't remember, but you know, there's shots of, I want to say I want to say Richard Nixon even visited some of them there. I don't remember. I don't remember. But I do remember shots of the astronauts looking out of the windows of their
That's pretty
Airstream trailer.
awesome.
The Airstreams are those ones with the curved corners,
Yeah.
okay? And they're usually metal, shiny, all shiny aluminum. And so, but anyway, it was fun. It was fun working in that building. So I'm sorry. I think I've over answered your question.
Oh,
What
that was a great answer,
that
nonetheless.
that that's what I did. That's what I did starting with graduate research and for my postdoctoral work.
Yeah,
But
thank you for
but
sharing.
I began my interest in biophotons and how they might be useful. I
Yeah.
began that during my graduate studies before I started doing any of this research. So what I'm doing now is basically a logical extension of what I began doing many years ago when I first began my graduate studies at the University of California at Davis, which I would highly
Awesome.
recommend to people. It's a great school, wonderful
Yeah.
school,
And
especially
for
if you can
those of
handle
you
heat.
watching, I will be linking all of this in the description box for you.
Oh, good, good, good.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
good opportunity for me to mention to people that Nexus theory, if you're interested in delving into it, first of all, the the best thing you could do is ask Natalie to invite me back and where we can talk about it. Ask her questions, and she'll relay them to me. Or I've begun a podcast. It's called the Adventures in Consciousness podcast, and the first 10 episodes are devoted to Nexus theory. The short episodes, they total 90 minutes altogether, and you can find it at brainandconsciousness.com. I'll say that again, brainandconsciousness.com. You'll put it in the
yeah.
links.
I'll link it down
Right,
below,
Natalie?
guys, as well.
Awesome, awesome. And there you can get a lot more detail, um, because because there are certain things that need to happen for this to even be true, and and they're there. All of the structures, like like I started with biophotons, but what I didn't explain to you is that all the cells of our bodies, some are in motion, those don't count, but all the other cells of our bodies are contained on protein structures called collagen. Your body is about 50% uh, uh, collagen of all its protein. About half
Yeah.
of it is collagen.
Interesting. Good to
It
know.
makes up it makes up our skin, all our organs, um, everything but uh, hair and nails and parts of our teeth. perhaps a few other things I can't think of right now, but everything is made of these fibrous proteins. And when I first learned about biophotons, I was thinking, what are what are these things for? And then it was, well, either these things they're for something, or they're just accidentally there for some reason, like secondary to natural radioactivity going off in our bodies, or high energy chemical reactions. Because it turns out that the biophotons are emitted from our cells mitochondria. They're, which are often referred to as the powerhouses of the cells, where high energy reactions
Yeah.
go on to create a molecule called ATP that gets used to power all the energetic processes of our metabolism. All our cells make ATP and need to do this, and consequently have mitochondria. So, and that's where they come from. Mostly, it's possible sometimes to get biophotons out of other structures, but I think those are mostly just artifacts caused by damage or chemical mixing. Because I did some experiments at my first NASA location at Ames Research Center down in Silicon Valley. Um, I gained access to a laboratory where I could actually measure biophotons coming from yeast,
Wow.
and they're there all right. They're there, and I did experiments to show that they were real, and that I could make them if I got a culture of yeast going, and I put something in it like alcohol to make them all die. Whoosh, they give up all their biophotons in a big
Wow.
flash. Not a visible flash, but countable by the equipment available at the time. Um, so um, it turns out that early on, I was thinking, well, if these biophotons are useful, they have to be doing something, and the most likely thing is they're probably used for communicating between cells.
Yeah.
Different cells are are talking to each other with these biophotons. Well, so in order for that to be possible, four things have to happen. The light has to be generated, biophotons have to be generated. We know that's true.
Yeah.
There has to be a mechanism for light to be conducted from one cell to another.
Yeah.
There has to be a mechanism for the receiving cells to actually receive the light
Yeah.
and transduce it into something meaningful, a signal that
Yeah.
they can
Yeah.
recognize. Those are the bare minimum. Other things can exist too, but those four things. So I knew biophotons existed. The second thing was, is there any way of them being conducted from
Mm.
one cell to another? So, well, I was a physiology student. I knew that collagen is a fibrous molecule that most of our non-motile cells are attached to. And so I went down to the slaughterhouse, my local slaughterhouse, and they gave me two steer legs to dissect, and because the legs contain very strong tendons.
Mm.
Tendons are what connect our muscles to our bones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we have we have Achilles tendons. We have a lot of tendons are the stringy things that we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
feel in our wrists and places, right? And they're fibers. Think of them as very strong ropes that are connecting muscles to the bones to make things move. Well, they're they consist of tendons are mostly pure collagen. There
Yeah.
are a few cells
Okay.
scattered among them, but not many. They're mostly parallel arrays of collagen fibers. So I thought, well, if these are guiding biophotons, maybe they're acting like fiber optics. Maybe the
Yeah.
maybe collagen acts like fiber optics. So I got some, and I borrowed a laser. This was back
Awesome.
when lasers weren't easy. Lasers were expensive and rare. I borrowed one from the mechanical engineering department, took it over to the lab I worked in, and dissected out the big tendons from both the legs. And first, I just set up the laser to shine, and and shone the laser light into one end, the fat end of the tendon, and I could see that light penetrated a certain distance. And then when I put force, even a little bit of force on the tendon, the light would zoom out and penetrate much farther. Okay,
Okay.
that's called a pilot experiment, something you do just to see
Mm.
if it's worth measuring, worth
Yeah.
setting up a real experiment for. So then I did. I set up an experiment where on what's called an optical bench, where I could screw down the laser, and I screwed down these lab clamps. One was a circular one that I got some giant washers that I could put pins through and stab into one end of the tendon without deforming it too much, without constricting it, without tying something to it, but just sticking a few things into it from around the perimeter.
Yeah.
Needles, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pins, I should say. Needles are what you sew with. Just pins I use to hold them in there, long pins. And then I sewed the other end to a force transducer, a device that I could use to measure how much force, how much
Oh,
stretching
okay. Yep.
force
Yep.
I was
Okay.
putting on it. And 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 you know what? I think I'm going to try a little experiment. Do we have time? Or are we going way
Yeah.
over time?
Well,
We're
we
kind
have
of way
kind
over
of gone
time.
over time, but I mean, I'm kind of interested at this point.
Let me show you the graph.
All
Let me show
right.
you the graph. Oh, I have it right here. Happy day, happy day. Okay, let's see. It's in I have it in Google Docs. And I'll show this to you. Let's see. I'll blow it up as a slideshow.
Awesome.
And then okay, there it is. There it is. And now on this screen, press Alt to show or hide meeting controls. Okay. Now I'll share screen and show you this. Okay. Do you see a black and white graph there saying light preferentially
Yes, I see it.
preferentially travels along collagen fibers? Okay.
Yep, it's a graph. Yep.
Okay. Do you see my mouse?
Yes.
You do. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me move our pictures out of the way. All right. This this right angle at the top is meant to designate that this was the amount of light that got transmitted, or in this case, really absorbed perpendicular to collagen fibers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Yep.
And this, so much less light was absorbed. This is an absorbance scale,
Yep.
meaning more was transmitted parallel. This is a symbol for parallel. So this is
Okay.
parallel.
Yep. Yep.
This is
Got you.
perpendicular. I took 3 samples and put them into a device called a spectrophotometer. 2 are so exactly too close together that they are overlaying here, with one a
Okay.
little bit off. I probably messed this one up a little bit, stuffing it into the little cuvette. It's called. It's a little quartz box, a centimeter by a centimeter, normally
Okay.
used to put solutions in, so that you can measure how much light. You can see the scale at the bottom. This was a scanning spectrophotometer between 300 on the right and 800 nanometers on the left, with the visible range starting about here, around 400, and ending around 800. So the
Mm.
peak here, this is around 600, a little over 600, um, um, and this just happened to be around the. This is the peak transmittance. This is in the red range. All this all this is red. All this is red light right here. Okay,
Okay.
and
And the
so
top was blue, you were saying.
um no.
Oh, the bottom of the spectrum was red and the top
Oh,
was.
this end of the spectrum is bluish.
Oh, okay.
So
Yep.
very little bluish light, but this is really ultraviolet. This is called near ultraviolet at 300 nanometers. Although some people can see, not everybody sees it exactly the same, at exactly the same wavelength. Some people are made a little bit different. They can see a little bit wider range here, in the range in between 300 and 400. But anyway, call 400 the typical visible range, and you can see that the transmittance of light through tendon starts at the 400 range. And then in peaks, you can think of this, if this were inverted, this would on the right, on the left here, it would say transmittance instead of absorbance. But
Okay.
absorbance makes more sense to use because it's a logarithmic scale.
Yeah.
Sorry, don't need to go into that. But this does show, this is one way of showing that um, there are fiber optic properties
Yeah.
to
In the
to
collagen. Yeah.
to collagen. Yes. So
That's incredible.
let me get back to this if I
So then what
can.
does that say? What does that mean?
Well, that provides a physical mechanism for light to be, our biophotons to be guided in our bodies from one cell to another, and
Yeah.
in our brains to be guided along fibrous structures, including collagen, but also neural axons are perfect structures for guiding light, and guiding light into the spaces of our brains, the cerebral ventricles, making up 150 milliliters. Now, if I can figure out, I can show you one more. I'd like to show you one more graph. I think I
Yeah,
have to,
sure.
I think I have to pause sharing first, or even stop sharing. Hello.
Hello.
Uh, let's see. I mean, okay, this is the first experiment that I did with those tendons. Share screen. Okay. Oops, wrong one. Here. Okay.
Here we go.
This shows
Okay.
on the bottom, this shows the kilograms tension absorbed, or not absorbed, the how much stretch put on the tendons.
Okay.
This this is how much they stretched. I did this with two tendons because I only had two legs, two steer legs. One broke early at about 3 kilograms force. One went one went all the way out to 7 kilograms force, but it had already plateaued. Okay, so this was just measuring how much light penetrated into how far it penetrated into the tendon at different force levels, and these bottom lines show how much the tendon actually stretched.
Okay.
It's elongation. Because see, tendons are like most other body tissues, like our muscles. If we use them, they'll grow.
Yeah.
They do have very few cells scattered in them that maintain them, and there's a little bit of circulation. But even though they're mostly parallel fibers, and in case anyone doesn't know, where did I put it? Oh, in case anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about in terms of fibers, okay, and especially optical fibers, fiber optics. These are some. These are fiber optics right here. And when I shine a light in one end, if I had the lights off, okay, the light is on now. You don't see much light escaping
Yeah.
along the outside of them. But what you do see is light off and on,
Yeah.
penetrating through the length of the fibers. Now, our collagen fibers don't don't guide light this well.
Mm.
What most people don't understand and don't realize is that our modern technologies, in many cases, work better than our own bodies naturally evolved systems have done. It
Yeah.
doesn't always work that way. Artificial hearts still aren't as good as our own, and artificial kidneys aren't as good as our own, but they're building circuits. Electronic circuits can hold way more information, like in memory chips and so forth, um, can hold way more information on them than our um, per unit volume than our even our neurons can.
Yeah.
At least that's what's currently believed.
Mm.
So we have, this is an example of fiber optics that are now off. But the other thing that this is used for is a demonstration of oneness. You see
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
lights here.
Mm.
Okay, you can divide them any number of ways, but there's light coming through all of them,
Mm.
We as individuals are like these lights, and we are all living illusions of separateness
Yeah.
because
Okay.
because there's only one single source
Yeah, that's
animating us
perfect.
all.
Yeah.
It's a um, nice little demo, don't you think?
Well, while you mentioned that we are one, what would be your message from your near-death experience and the work that followed? What kind of message would you leave us with? Not to put you on the spot or anything, Carl.
No, no, I'm glad you asked me that question.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's a very good question, actually, um, because there are a couple of answers. One is death is nothing to fear. Absolutely nothing to fear. There is no hell. There's no annihilation. Your spirit is never going to go away. Um, um, I don't believe we have separate souls as is normally conceived. We share a soul. We are all one soul. We are all one. This is the biggest take home message that you can know. It's what's been taught by various sages and saints and yogis and prophets for thousands of years now. This has been their basic message. We are all one, but they've never been able to explain how. So it's never made a lot of sense. So it's not something. We don't seem to be all one. We seem to be very separate individuals. But once you understand we have biophotons and you understand consciousness has to be explained somehow, and
Mm.
nexus theory is the first and so far the only theory which explains everything end to end without any gaps. No
Wow.
explanatory gaps, they're called. No giant leaps of faith. All all that it does is posit that consciousness is a fundamental force of nature, like magnetism or charge, that
Mm.
fills the universe in the 0 point energy and is ready to be expressed in our world whenever the situation circumstances are such that they're able to. And and our brains can do that. Animals brains can do that. I think even jellyfish can do it. I think they're probably conscious creatures. They
Yeah.
have eyes. There are jellyfish with eyes. What good are eyes if you don't have consciousness to look out of them
Exactly.
with?
It's good that you
Okay.
pointed that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, jellyfish. And they have, have you ever seen bioluminescent jellyfish in an aquarium?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I have.
They'll be moving, they'll be scintillating lights up and down on the inside and the outside of them. I think they're talking to other jellyfish, and I think they're maintaining something of a consciousness
Yeah, the
within
one.
themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
they may exist. They may exist in a sense of oneness. So
Yeah.
so really it's those two things. Death is absolutely nothing to fear. Um, God is a wonderful entity that gives rise to you. You are a little bit of it, and you are it
Oh.
in your essence. You are as much it as a piece of a hologram is is as much a part of the original.
Yeah.
You are a piece. You're a piece of God. At that ratio, though, 150 mils to the entire volume of the universe. That's how big we really are in the grand scheme of things.
That's
Um,
incredible.
so the bottom line, I would suggest. I think I'll take this picture off here. Pause share, stop share. um, I'll take this picture off and just kind of wind up with um, if you want to understand your place in the universe, it's to understand who you really are. And I've just
Wow.
explained that you can know who you really are by understanding nexus theory, by really understanding it. So
Yeah.
so go to the website. It's free.
I
I
know
want
I will be.
I just want everyone to know, and because
I just got the
it's it's
goosebumps.
it's first of all, it's so beautiful, and it explains my near death experience. It explains the light I saw. It explains how I could be one with it. Oh, I left off a part. I left off the part. Do you want to talk about do you want to talk about entanglement a little bit or not? We're way over time now.
Yeah, I'm a bit way over. What I think we might do, Carl, and I'm sure the guests will agree. Oh, sorry, the viewers. We'll
Okay.
definitely have to bring you back onto the podcast. 100%.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
We can
definitely.
talk about we can really dig down into the weeds. It's all in Nexus Theory 101 that
I might
I
make
directed you to.
a series of digging deep and diving into the rabbit hole sort of thing and do like a little series on that. What do you think?
I think
Comment
that's a
below, guys, what you think about that.
I think that's a excellent idea, and I'm very willing.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
and and I think as I get better at using Zoom, I can construct a much better slideshow to actually
Awesome.
show people. You know what? Let me do one more thing. Let me
All
just do
right,
one
for
more
you,
thing.
Carl, we'll do one more thing.
This this is one of my favorite things. If I can get it here, here we are. Um, um, well, it might be a little more than one. Let me see. There's um, no, I'll leave it with the ventricles here. Let's see, turn it into a slideshow. I've talked about a fair amount about the ventricles, but I haven't shown anybody a picture. Here's what they look like.
Awesome.
Here's here's on the left is a view of the brain from the left side with the ventricles outlined in or filled
Is
with
this the
blue.
brain in half or is this the left side of the whole brain?
Looking on the left side here, we're just looking. This is a whole brain, and we're
Yep.
just
Okay.
looking at the left side of it. Okay, on on the right side. Oops, that wasn't what I
Oh,
wanted to
that looks
do.
like a
Uh-oh.
fetus.
This is this is what a real brain actually looks like. This is
Interesting. Ooh.
this isn't a this is from a cadaver. Um, when I click, you know, it's not going where I expect it to when I click on it. Darn it. I'm gonna have to stop share, go back, find it. Um,
One step at a
Cortex.
time. We're all learning here, Carl.
Yes, 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 yes. Um, I did want to show, here we are. I did want to show the ventricles because everybody has these. Everybody has these in their heads. Okay. They're colored blue because that's, they're liquid, but it's actually filled with clear liquid. Now, the volume on the left might look pretty large, but you see how skinny they are on the right
Yeah.
side. The right side is as if the brain was transparent and you were looking at the ventricles from the back. And in the back here, we
Yeah.
have
Yep.
down
Okay.
here this funny area. If you can still see my cursor,
Yeah.
this is called the cerebrum. Um, and over here, it's this area. This is the part that learns how to ride a bicycle or drive a car without thinking about it. It
Yeah.
just learns to do things automatically. But you can see they're very, these ventricles, they occupy very valuable real estate in the brain. The brain is tightly folded so as to maximize the surface area available for cortical processing here. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Okay. Mm.
uh, and 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 so these ventricles right in the very middle, um, these just have to be doing something important, and they're lined with beating cilia, which can guide this. This is where a dynamic 3D hologram can be created, and I believe is created inside our brains.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Carl.
You're
That's
very
very
welcome.
important information. It's very
Thank
good
you.
to know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my favorite topic for conversation. So
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sorry we really went over time. Maybe you could break it into
Look,
two.
it's my first episode, Carl. We'll see how it
Okay.
goes. We'll see where my channel
Okay.
goes. I'm all for it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I know you'll be a rock star.
Oh, I hope
Um,
so.
you will. You
How did I
will.
do? How did
Uh,
I do on my
you,
very first episode,
you
guys?
you've asked some very intelligent questions,
Oh,
and
good.
and you already know right now more about how the brain actually works
Yeah.
than most people, than most doctors, than most neurophysiologists. They haven't got it figured out.
Yeah.
First, because most of them believe the cortex is where consciousness occurs, and that's just not even possible. And
Yeah.
and because even though so much has been known about the brain, so much in detail about all its structures, both on a macroscopic and a microscopic scale, the pathways, the neurotransmitters, the the synapses,
Yeah.
how that works down in individual molecules, but
Yeah.
nobody's ever
No.
been able to make sense of it
Mm.
because science doesn't know about biophotons. They're
Yeah.
well documented in the scientific literature, but almost no scientists even know about them. I was never taught. I discovered them accidentally,
Yeah.
which is sufficiently accidental, I think, to be astronomically improbable. And I believe I was guided there. I think I it's the best explanation is that my near-death experience gave me sufficient intuition to be able to just pick the right book off the shelf,
Yeah.
instead of bound journal volumes actually, and just open it up and, huh, well, what do you know about this? Because it was quite an eye opener, and it still is.
Yeah.
It
That's
still is.
incredible. Wow, I don't
So
know what to say. I think that this entire process has just been absolutely amazing. And everything I've learnt from you in one session, I think I've learnt more in what I could have possibly learnt in school. Like, I don't even know how to explain. I just thank you. And for
well,
the viewers,
you're welcome.
please feel free to check out all the information that I will link below in regards to everything that you have learned today. Please check out his podcast, check out his website. And again, if you'd like, Carl, just mention that to the guests. Let them know.
Brain,
Yeah,
brainandconsciousness.com. Brain
awesome.
and conscious, and is spelled out. The little ampersand doesn't work and web URLs. Brainandconsciousness.com. Not brains and consciousness, brain and consciousness. And
Beautiful.
or look in the link below this video. Um,
Awesome.
and I look forward to uh, uh, telling more, telling
Yeah,
you more about this and telling more people about
awesome.
this.
We'll definitely have you back if
Good,
you're happy to come back.
good. I hope so. I hope so.
Awesome. Well, this is where we say our goodbye, Carl. Our goodbyes. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. Sorry, it's my first time.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right, Natalie. You did a fantastic job. You're clearly going to be an awesome podcast host.
Oh,
I have
thank you
faith in
so
you.
much.
I
Thank
have
you.
faith in.
All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of
Um,
your night, Carl, and or day for that matter. Here in Australia, it's night.
yes, the sun is rising. The sun is coming up in
Enjoy
Maine.
your day.
Thank you. I will. I'm going to go to bed actually, but goodbye to your fans, and it's been a pleasure talking with you. Ask questions below if you want. I love to answer questions. I love to talk about Nexus theory.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
bye everyone.
Bye, guys. Hi, it's Natalie again. If you guys liked my last video, please like, share, and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so that I can notify you for future videos. Thanks again for watching. This is Natalie from NDE Talk, and I hope to see you again.